Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, my fine friends. Welcome to episode 15 of season 10 of the Tom Petty Project podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Brown. This is the weekly podcast that digs into the entire Tom Petty catalogue, song by song, album by album, and includes conversations with musicians, fans, and people connected with Tom along the way. Today's episode is part of a fantastic conversation I had with Tom Petty fan Tim Bulman, who also publishes the marvelous Judge Timber's YouTube channel, where he covers the Beatles and solo Beatle catalogues, as well as, of course, Tom Petty. Tim breaks down the chords in each song with easy tips on how to learn them and how to play them. We talk lots about being enthusiastic amateurs and how we love connecting with other people through the power of music. I also dig a little bit into Tim's extensive and eclectic body of original work, and there are some links right down there in the episode notes for you to check out. Above all, though, we talked about our true love for and appreciation of Tom's music, and I know you're going to really enjoy this conversation. Sit back and relax and listen to the Honourable Judge Tim Bulman presiding.
Tom Petty. Tom Petty Project. Tom Petty. Hey, Tom Petty Project.
And then, well, I mean, we're going to jump right in here because it's actually a really good start point to jump in. So, finding your YouTube channel, and I think you've commented on one of my videos, and I was like, dude, this guy's done like a million Eddie tutorials, and I found a real kinship because you approach sort of those tutorials, I think, in the same way that I approach my episodes, is that I'm not a professional musician, I'm not not a producer, I'm not any of that. So I'm a layperson. I think that because of that, a layperson can explain things to another layperson quite easily. You know what I mean? When I watch your tutorial videos, like, you know how to play guitar, right? You're a good guitarist. It's not, maybe you wouldn't class yourself as, you're not a Satriani level or something like that. You're not a lead guitarist, but you deconstruct those parts really, really well, and in such a way that someone who is a beginner doesn't feel overwhelmed and doesn't feel like, I'm sort of, that's way beyond my reach. So when you started the YouTube channel, we'll talk about the evolution of it a little bit, but when you started doing these tutorials and these covers of Petty and the Beatles and all that kind of stuff, were you cognizant of that? Was that the aim to sort of relate from one hobbyist musician, if we use that term, to another? This is how I approach it, and this is how you can get into this song.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because I never I won't go to the whole background because it's not important, but it really started with Paul McCartney lessons. But surely it really was for people who either barely play or pick up a guitar once in a while, and they just want to be able to click on and just say, okay, here's the chords. It's C, G, A minor. Obviously, I'm not teaching Tom Petty tribute band players how to play these songs or any professional musician. That's not what I'm trying to do. I always say that. I try to be clear about it. I think most people get it. But it's for the beginner. I say beginner / intermediate. I'm not, people classify themselves differently. I consider myself, a beginner / intermediate. I mean, I've been playing guitar for 50 years, so I can't really just say I'm a beginner, but I'm an amateur, and it's not my living, and I don't get paid to play guitar. I don't monetize my YouTube channel. It's all for fun. It's all hobby. I'm happy to talk about my YouTube channel, but I'm not here to promote me or my channel. I'm here because I love your podcast, and you asked me to be a guest, and there was no way I was saying no. I mean, I'm happy to talk about anything, but I really don't care. I don't care how many subscribers I have. I don't try to. I'm really not. If somebody listens to this who loves Tom Petty and plays a little guitar and they check on some of my videos and it helps them, that's great. I love that. But I'm not looking to be the next YouTube sensation at all.
Yeah, I mean, we do it because we love it, right? I mean, that is that. But that comes across too, Tim. I think that when I watch your videos, it's just like, if we're sitting around and me and you are sitting around chatting about music, and you pick up your guitars, these are the chords, and you show me, and I sit there and I'm like, oh, okay, he's dropping to an E minor there or whatever it is. That's what it feels like, and I think that's why there's an appeal to that. But also, I was looking through again, and I mean, I always over prepare for conversations because it's just a nerd.
I have notes and stuff. I got stuff. I'm prepared because you're always prepared. But
when you see me scroll, I think it's because all my notes are on my computer, which
I'm old fashioned. See, I'm old fashioned. Paper.
But you've got I was looking through, and I think you've got 117 Saturday Night with Tom Petty videos online right now, and that's just one portion of it. So you've got your Beatles stuff, you got Petty, you've got your originals. I was looking through that too, and that's something like you've got well over 100 of your own songs up there.
I
So
think so.
even though you say, if you know, we all have that disclaimer when we're sort of amateurs or hobbyists that, I'm not really, well, I think you are a musician, dude, because you write and you've got this broad range of songs. So maybe let's rewind a wee bit and let's talk about, as I like to on these conversations, where did you grow up? What was music like in your household? And what were your influences early on?
I grew up in New York, Long Island, just outside New York City. So probably musically, I have two older brothers, so that's probably where the story starts. So I was exposed to a lot of music early on as a very young boy. I was born in 1966, so I'm 58 now, just so it's out there. People tell me I look younger, but I'm 58. But I have older brothers, 4 years and 3 years older than me, and they were big into music. So when they were really into getting into music in the 70s, I was young, but I was hearing what my brothers were listening to. So that really exposed me to a lot of, classic 60s music, Who, Beatles, Stones, Kinks, all that stuff. I was hearing that at a very young age. And to sort of connect it to my story, so I really, tribute my brothers for that, just soaking it through them. But my older brother, Chris, brought home a guitar one day. He was probably like 12 years old. I was probably like 7, 8, something like that. And then we had a guitar in the house, and I just started being interested, like messing around. I didn't take formal lessons or anything like that, but my older brother was playing, and he'd show me some things, and then he had some chord books. There was the day before YouTube, and I'm looking at old chord books, and what's this and what's that, and just got the bug. I was like probably 8 years old when I picked up, it was a classical guitar, nylon strings.
Oh, wow.
Which, by the way, is a great way to learn to play because it's nice and easy on your fingers. But that was kind of my introduction, was my older brothers. And New York radio was a big deal. I mean, I was growing up, I was 10, 12, 14, 16 in the 70s, going into the early 80s. So all that period, I was listening to the radio all the time. And obviously, if we're going to get to Tom Petty, that was my introduction to Tom Petty. He got tons of airplay. What his first album was in 76, somewhere around there. I don't know if I heard it on the radio in 76, but closely thereafter, if not in 76, because American Girl, then Listen to Her Heart, and all those songs were played all the time on multiple radio stations I listened to. So I just heard Tom Petty constantly on the radio. And that was sort of my introduction to him with many other bands and other musicians.
Do you remember that? Because I've talked about this, and you've probably heard me talk about this in the pod there. I just have this very distinct, almost like a sense memory of hearing Black Dog by Led Zeppelin the first time, and it just blew in my mind. Like, it's seemed like probably 4 or 5, 6 years or whatever it was, of sitting down with these, this size of headphones on my tiny little boyish head in front of my dad's old record player, and just knowing that, that's my music. That's what I connect to. Like, I love my mum's stuff and I love classical, all this stuff, but that's the stuff that really gets me, really gets me going. Is there any sort of point where that musical connection happened for you?
Been thinking about this a lot. When I heard Here Comes My Girl, I knew something was different about Tom Petty. Like, I heard that the guitar tones on that, the way he sings it, kind of speaks it, he never really did it again, as far as I know. That was kind of a one-time thing. And then through that was great. And then, Here Comes My Girl, very Beatle-ish, very melodic. That was the song that I knew he was beyond a lot of other things I was listening on the radio. Again, most of my taste went back to that classic before Tom Petty, the 60s groups. But when I started hearing that from him, I was like, wow, he is doing something really interesting. So that is definitely the song that kind of rocked my world, my Black Dog, I guess, for Tom Petty. But even then, though, I didn't do a deep dive. I didn't buy all the initial albums. I did see him. I saw him once, and I saw him in 1985. So I was a big enough fan from my radio and just knowing him that I went to see him. I saw him at Jones Beach on Long Island, outdoor concert, really cool venue. And It was Southern Accents tour. I didn't own Southern Accents. I didn't buy it after the show, but it was a great show. I loved it. It was I wish I saw him again, of course, those regrets, but at least I did see him, and I've all positive memories of that, but I still didn't take the deep dive. I was still Beatles, Stones,
Yeah.
Who, Billy Joel, Elton John. Those were my deep dives. Tom Petty was like the next level, but he was big, but he was like in that next level.
Yeah.
Maybe like the Cars and Tom Petty, artists like that. But it was brewing. It was definitely brewing. And then
a simmer along, yeah.
I mean, for me, then, just to kind of take us up to date, I guess, Traveling Wilburys. What was that, 88, somewhere around there? So I was going to finish, just graduated college. When Tom Petty starts working with George Harrison and Bob Dylan and Jeff Lynne, I love the ELO too. When that connection happened, my two worlds met, it just perfectly. And then I was just like more like, okay, I bought the Traveling Wilburys first album, volume 1. Then Full Moon Fever comes out. Like, yes, you bought that. That kind of propelled me into, digging into it more.
Right.
And then, basically Wildflowers, is kind of my next big memory. So 94, and I bought that immediately. And the whole Stringer albums, I mean, my Tom Petty period, Wildflowers, she's the one I'm happy to talk about, but I'm just going to set that as a separate type of album, the soundtrack.
Yeah.
But Echo to me is kind of Wildflowers, the sequel, almost. It's almost part 1 and part 2 to my
100%.
ears. And then Last DJ could be the album I listen to most by Tom Petty. I won't say my favorite album in case you ask me. I won't say his best album, but the album I probably pick up on CD. I listen to everything on CD. The album I probably pick up the most is The Last DJ. God bless you.
It's a great record. I mean, it is that thing though. When we were talking about this with Will, and I've talked about this a lot, so I'm trying to be cognizant of not saying the same things over and over again, but it really is astonishing that you get Wildflowers and you sort of get that, I think, that freedom that Tom says, okay, this is the way I need to make music moving forward. I'm not going to worry about chasing the hits and chasing the trends and all this kind of stuff. But that late period career, I contend that no other major artist, not Springsteen, not Dylan, not anyone, and not even McCartney, I don't think anyone had the same sort of late period career that Tom did. When you look at Last DJ, Mojo, Hypnotic Eye, and even Highway Companion thrown out in there, from Echo forward, or Wildflowers forward, really, it's astonishing the quality and the consistency, right?
Well, absolutely. And I have to confess, I'm going to be totally honest. After Last DJ, I kind of lost touch with Tom a little bit.
Yeah.
No particular reason, just I did. So Highway Companion, Mojo, Hypnotic Eye kind of went under the radar for me. I might have been vaguely aware of them. I didn't buy them. It wasn't a conscious, I'm turning my back on Tom. I just, I loved what I loved. And I don't know, it's just, life gets busy and I was thinking about other things, I guess. But that sort of takes me to you because later, I don't know, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, kind of around when Tom passed. I mean, that rocked my world. I just was not expecting it. And I just was like, wow. That really caused me to go, I really need to go into everything by Tom, do the deep dive. So I started buying, I saw the CDs I had, the ones I've kind of mentioned. And I'm like, well, I don't have this. I don't even have his first album. How could that be? and he has later ones and he has another solo album. I mean, I love Highway Companion. I love it. That's probably my second most, I'd say Last DJ and Highway Companion are probably the two I listen to the most. Again, I'm not gonna say they're best, but those the ones to my ears, that's what I want to hear. That's the Tom Petty I want to hear. I mean, I want to hear everything, but those are my first choices. I'm grabbing one on a road trip or something. And Mojo and Hypnotic Eye, I picking them up. And around the time I was doing that, this great Tom Petty podcast comes on. And I discover you and I'm like, oh my God, this is great. As I'm going through the deep dive, you're doing it song by song. And it's just been just wonderful, like following Tom's career with you and, how you're treating Wildflowers. I just think it's beautiful, from a fan perspective, you obviously have reverence to it. You respect it. And that comes across so much. And that's why when you asked me to be on for this, I was just thrilled.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, I think I talked about this maybe on the intro to Wildflowers episode that I did. That I kind of the closer I got to Wildflowers, the more I realized that that's why I started this podcast, because I wanted to talk about Wildflowers, right? And I mean, I'm glad that I didn't just, because my initial idea actually, honestly, was, I think one of the initial ideas was, well, I'll talk about Wildflowers first, and then I'll sort of bounce around. But then I thought, well, no, I'll go back. And I think that evolution through the first part of Tom's catalogue, it explains a lot about Wildflowers as well, right? You kind of see where all of that comes from. And when you see that growth and you understand that, that you've got Jimmy Iovine comes in and sort of teaches him studio craft. And then you've got, the difficult period of Southern accents and Let Me Up, I've Had Enough, and wanted to change things up and getting creatively restless. And then the friction with Stan, and it all comes to a head. And then we get the freedom of Full Moon Fever with Jeff and Wilbridge with his friends, all this kind of stuff. And then we get into Wildflowers. And like I said, to me, I think had I started at Wildflowers, I just would have missed so much of the story and I wouldn't have been ready to talk about it. And now but then especially talking to other people about it and recognizing as I've gone through this sort of this journey with this guy, how important he is to so many people, that I don't think you can really do it justice until you've got that background. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. And I think, the listeners of your podcast really want to be on that journey with you from, start to finish. And when you talk about, covering live albums, compilations after and the Wilburys, believe me, I'm sure I speak for all your listeners. We want to hear that. We don't want to hear you're going to give it up after the studio albums and that's it.
Yeah.
So we hope you keep doing that. But yeah, I think it's wonderful that you did start at the beginning. And I've learned so much. Again, I was pretty weak, other than, there were a lot of radio hits. I knew a lot of the songs just from hearing on the radio, but not all of them. So I've learned songs. I've covered songs on my channel that I didn't know before. I learned them from you being introduced to them on the Tom Petty podcast. I didn't even know they existed, and I got the albums, and so now I again, not a Tom Petty expert, but I've listened to all the albums, all the songs, and can kind of appreciate the vastness of his work, the diversity of his work. It really is incredible. But I do agree. I think that the middle to tail end, to me, that's what I gravitate to the most. I'm not going to say anything negative about like the big hits. They're great.
Yeah.
American Girl is a classic. But that's not what I generally will put on if I'm going to listen to Tom Petty.
Do you think some of that comes from, and that thing we've said, or I've said before too on the show, is that I'm a huge Queen fan, but I don't really listen to Bohemian Rhapsody and I don't listen to We'll Rock You and We're the Champions. And Springsteen fans, most of them don't listen to Born to Run or Born in the USA. Is there an element of that we sort of sometimes overlook with Tom, that we think, American Girl is brilliant because it's this flash of genius, and just because it happened to be on the first album versus the 12th shouldn't really diminish it. But I think because we spent so long with it, that it's kind of like that chair over there, right? Well, I know that chair's comfy, but I'm actually interested in what I'm sitting on. I've got this new chair now, so you kind of just take a lot of it for granted. Isn't it a beautiful thing that he's got this catalogue that we can take it for granted, because we sort of listen to Her Heart, or we listen to Here Comes My Girl, or American Girl, or any of those early songs, and you think, that's not the stuff that I'm listening to now. But when you do listen to it, you go, oh, man, that's good. That's really good.
I heard Woman in Love today.
Oh, man, that song's good.
That is so good. But again, it's not what I pick. I'm going to listen to that. But it came on and I was like, wow, that is great. And it's just, again, a testament to Tom's songwriting, to the Heartbreakers, to the producers. It's that they could just consistently, because again, I don't consider any drop off. If anything, I think improvement. Yeah. Again, without diminishing any of the earlier work, just I think maturity, maybe that's the word. Yeah. And Tom was mature as a young man, and in 76 he was, but he matured more and he had more life experiences. And, I'm a mature man. I'm 58 years old, and I've really come to love Tom and appreciate him really in my 50s. Yeah. So I'm listening to a lot of the music he was recording in his 40s and 50s, and it really resonates. Maybe when I was 18, if I'd heard Highway Companion, I wouldn't have jumped at it. That's great. I don't know. I mean, who knows? But it is the way it is. And I'm just so glad we have him.
Which I think too, though, and do you think that when you get older, you start to appreciate different things in your life? And of course, when you're 18, 19, it's all about energy. It's all about spontaneity. It's all about the now, right? When you're young, it's all about experience now. I think that when you get older, I appreciate a lot more now the professionalism of this band. Right. And then you look at how dedicated they were to their music and to improving as musicians. You listen to Ben Montench talk now. Ben Montench, who is in his, I think he's 71 now or something, still practices every day, still learns, still listens, still wants to improve. I mean, that is one of the things to me that sets them apart from, let's go on the hair metal, where you think, okay, well, they're doing it for the chicks and the fame and everything, which is fine, there's always an element of that. But the Heartbreakers, they just kept getting better as musicians. And so it gave them that range to, explore things like reggae on Mojo, where you get Don't Pull Me Over, or you get something like Fault Lines, where it's got that weird bossa nova thing that Ferroni does on. So they weren't satisfied, I guess is what I'm getting to. They were never going to be this legacy act who just went on greatest hits tours. They wanted to keep creating new music, and the songs seem to keep coming from them.
Yeah. Tom never dried up.
No.
He just never did, and I don't think he would have. I mean, there's no reason to believe he would have.
No.
So, again, it makes it more tragic that we lost him, but the positive is all the fantastic work he left us all. And, and we still have some, the band and all that, but, it's incredible. It's I don't know how many songs I've never looked up. I know you said I've covered like 100 or so on my channel. I don't know how many he has. I don't know what percentage I've covered, but I
think
there's a big body of work.
It's massive. It's okay. I'll bring it back to my nerdy little spreadsheet here. The ones I've got, studio recordings that I've got is 292.
Okay, yeah,
which is a lot of music, right?
Does that include everything? Does that include like Mudcrutch songs?
That's Mudcrutch, Will Breeze.
Okay.
Yeah.
And mine does too. My 100 includes. I mean, I've covered Mudcrutch. I love Mudcrutch.
Yeah.
And Wilburys, obviously. So I consider all that Tom Petty. Like that's part of his body of work. Like when the Beatles. I mean, Paul McCartney. I just consider Beatle Paul. It's a part of Paul, but
Wings Paul
and Wings Paul. All those are just bands he was in. Beatle fans, what? But I mean, I don't. As a fan, to me, I could play, Hey Jude next to Let 'Em In, or like it doesn't bother me. It's Paul McCartney's voice. It's still the same guy. So to me, it's one body of work, and there's another huge body of work.
Oh man, and I'm a huge Beatles man. I'm a huge McCartney fan too. In fact, I've got in your videos, you always have that the box set of the lyrics right behind you.
Oh yes,
and I've got that. I have that over on my little entertainment stand too. Because we're gonna digress, and this happens all the time in the show. People who listen, we're gonna go in a rabbit hole here. But I think the thing with McCartney is there is a similarity to Tom, and I think it's just that level of like Dylan, any level of musician. McCartney was always eclectic as well. McCartney was writing lots of different styles of things. So when you get to, McCartney 3 or Flaming Pie, or you go and listen to, Ram, or you listen to Beatles for Sale, it is McCartney because he's a unique, singular songwriter who's got his very own distinctive voice, not just his singing voice, but his own creative voice. So that through line is so strong that he's never going to be able to get away from it. He's never going to be able to sound like anyone else other than Paul McCartney.
Yeah, I mean, but there's so much variety. But I know, but it does take you back. It is similar to Tom that way. You could still any Tom Petty is different. Tom Petty songs as he's done. It is it's Tom Petty. Yeah. His voice, you recognize his voice and just the style. Often what he's writing about or singing about, the themes, come back. And I don't mean that in some bad way. I mean, there's just classic things he wants to talk about.
Yeah.
It's great. I mean, I technically have a Beatles YouTube channel, but I almost never cover the Beatles. I mean, I do all the solo Beatles. I'm more interested in, what McCartney 3 and Egypt Station and Chaos Creation in the Backyard. I mean, those, again, if I'm going to pick up a Paul McCartney CD, I'm going to pick up one of those. Probably not. I know you love Revolver. I love Revolver too. I'm not going to get a Revolver argument, but I probably would pick up Chaos and Creation over Revolver if I'm just want to listen to something.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not saying it's better, but just what I feel like hearing. But
Yeah.
again, it's wonderful that these artists have given us so much. Whatever mood you're in, you can find the album or the song that suits you. And
Yeah.
that's amazing. And that's, what incredible songwriters.
Yeah. So when you're picking off a song to do, Saturday Night Petty, and you're going to learn a song and deconstruct it, what's that process like? And are there sort of things that you find in doing a song where you think, oh yeah, no, I've heard them do this kind of thing before, so I know roughly what they're going to be doing. Are there sort of things that you can latch onto with the way that Mike and Tom play that have become familiar the more you do it?
Yes, definitely. And these were things I was not aware of till I started doing and learning some of these songs. It's one thing
Yeah.
to listen to a song as a fan and a listener, which most of the time that's my role. But when you sit down to like learn to play the song
Yeah.
and you're trying to play it at least close to the way they're playing it, I never try to make it exact. And I'm a rhythm guitarist, so I'm looking more at what Tom's doing. Mike is in a league of his own. I mean, sometimes I might be able to mimic him a little bit, but
Yeah.
I don't really even try to come close to Mike. Tom, I do a little more. So basically, if I pick a song, I basically do it all by ear. I just listen,
Yeah.
grab my guitar. Usually I have a capo with me because Tom loves capo. And usually I'll find something, most of his songs, Wildflower is a good example. A lot of capo acoustic songs on Wildflower. If you try to play them open, it's not going to sound right. You're not going to find, it's just never going to sound right. So I'll just kind of fiddle around. I don't have perfect pitch or anything, but for 50 years of playing, I can usually kind of hear what chords I think they are. And Tom does have certain styles. Like, again, I'm not going to get technical, and I can't get technical, as they said, but there's certain ways he voices his chords. I'll say one thing. It's all over Wildflowers, but it's over so many Tom Petty songs. Whenever he plays like open chords, like a C or an F, he always plays the high G note. He's always playing it. He plays it on California, on Wildflowers, like song after song. That's just, I think, a C chord to him has that note, which is unusual. Most people don't have that. They might add it once in a while, but there's certain things I've noticed. So I can hear them. I think Square One, I think the same thing. There's so many songs, so I won't go through the list, but so I do start here. I can hear, when I went to pick up Square One, I listened and I could kind of hear he's definitely using a capo, and he's definitely doing that high. I'm just going to call it high G. I'm not going to worry about the capo. That stuff. And I just have to figure out exactly, what Fred he's at and how's he doing it. I will sometimes after that. And as more people have watched my channel, I've taken it more seriously. I was pretty loose at the beginning. And then when 1,000 people watch your lesson, I start feeling, ooh, I better get this a little closer. I do watch some videos. So fortunately, there's so many great videos of Tom performing so many of his songs. Unlike the Beatles, you're kind of hitting, you don't know. There's no video of them playing. You don't know if they're using key. Tom performed most of his songs, not all, but most, at some sort of video performance. So I try some of them. I'll go and try to watch and see, is he using a capo? How is he voicing the chords? Again, I'm usually concentrating on Tom. I might notice what Mike's doing, but my lessons are really for a solo guitarist, just like I said, an amateur beginner / intermediate, picking up a guitar who just wants to know the chords. So I could play this at a party Saturday night, or, play it at a coffee house. And even if it's not exactly what Tom Petty played or the Heartbreakers, people are going to recognize it. It's in the original. I always do it in the original key. I always do that. So I try to get him as close as he can, but, again, at an amateur level.
Yeah.
But it's really all by ear. I've given up on chord charts. They stink. They stink. I mean, I'm sure there are some good chord charts out there, but for the most part, if I ever check one, I immediately regret that I checked it. And again, it's not because I'm so good. I don't know how they do chord charts, but most of them I think are very inaccurate. So I'll trust my ear and the video if there is one. And, occasionally, see, with Tom, there's not many tutorials, so I can't really watch somebody else's lessons. Sometimes on the Beatles, I'll watch like a Mike Pacelli, if you know him. He has a great Beatles channel. I mean, these people, they play every instrument, every part perfectly. That's not me. I'm not trying to do that. But I might watch Mike. First, I just enjoy his work, but I might watch him just to make sure I'm playing it pretty close to what John Lennon's doing or what George is doing. I don't want to be way off or I'm missing something here. So I might check another lesson occasionally. Again, Tom doesn't have too many lessons. So, except for sort of the big hits, which are the ones I avoid because I figure they're out there.
Yeah.
There's no, I've never done refugee. I could do refugee. Why should I do it? It doesn't
Yeah.
really make any sense. I mean, maybe at some point I'll do a cover version. I'll do a quick tutorial, play it on acoustic guitar, but I'd rather do square one.
Yeah.
That, because as far as I know, it's not out there. It's a great song.
Yeah.
It's on one of my favorite Tom Petty albums. It's kind of in my wheelhouse of what I do. So I would rather do that. And I think that might be more helpful. And I, just out of curiosity, I checked my channel, like, which I never do. I don't worry about views and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I just checked my Tom Petty playlist since I was going to be on. I was like, what's my number one Tom Petty video? Do you know what it is by any chance?
No,
I never would
look.
have guessed. Square One. That's why it's on my mind. Square
Wow.
One. And what I would call an obscure Tom Petty song, not known outside the base,
Yeah.
is number one. And it's like 5,000 views or something. I don't know. It's high for my videos.
That's wicked cool.
For small potatoes. Yeah. So I just found that out today. It made me so happy because I'm like, that's the kind of songs I want to do and I feel good about doing. I will do some of the bigger, Tom Petty songs, some occasionally, but that my focus, just even like with the Beatles, I'd rather do an obscure George Harrison song, a B-side than While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Like I've never covered that on my channel. I play it.
Don't you think though that some of that is, like us, the deep dive fans? Yeah, if I'm going online, I can find a million people playing Refugee. But when you Google and you see, wait, whoa, someone's done the chord chart for House in the Woods. Are you kidding me? Or someone's done the chord for Saving or whatever, Square One. Like what? Really? Oh, okay. Well, I got to check this out. Then you end up down the rabbit hole. It's like, this guy's actually a fan because he's doing Square One and he's not doing, because Beato's done. I think it's some, why is this song great? He did I Won't Back Down, and he did probably Free Falling, but he's not dug into. And that's where you want to see. I'd love to see Rick Beato talk about Big Weekend, or I'd love to see Rick Beato talk about Straight to the Dark, something like that. Because that's the stuff that gets us happy as fans. It's like, we know Free Fall, we know it's great. Let's talk about something interesting.
I do love Rick's channel though. I do watch it.
Oh,
I mean, not every video because he has so many, but they're great. He has great stuff. But yeah, and even again, the Beatles. There's so many YouTubers who do a great job. Every instrument perfectly. They play the exact instruments the Beatles played. All that. I'm not going to go buy Rickenbacker just to play it for my. I just can't do that, and I don't feel the need to that. But again, there's so many out there, so I steer away from that, and I try to, even if I do a Beatles song, I try to do, quote unquote, if there's such a thing as a lesser known Beatles song, I try to hit those, or do something a little different. Mostly focus on the solo work, but anyway, this is Tom Petty podcast.
Well, no, it's all tied in, but because I think what it goes to though is what I was going to sort of mention there as you were talking is, when you don't worry about playing everything note for note, that's always what I prefer. And it was great. Like the two Petty tribute bands that I've done so far on the show, neither of those two do they're not going out and they're not putting the wig on and they're not doing absolutely everything. Because, okay, that's great. And I think that musicians should sometimes sit down and try and do that because it, helps you as a musician to be better at your craft. But as a listener, I want the person playing the guitar in front of me, I want their personality to come through that. Because music and art is about connection. So if you're just literally saying, this is exactly what Mike Campbell's playing, well, go listen to Mike Campbell play then.
Yeah.
Why would I listen to, you know what I mean? Like there's still that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. That's why I have the channel. But and Mike does great videos and he does, talk through his songs.
Videos,
so if Mike Campbell teaches you how to play a Heartbreaker song, Judge Timber shouldn't do it. Like that's a little I mean, maybe I've stumbled on one or two, but I purposely would try not to do it.
Yeah.
Because what's the point?
But it's the same thing with, again, I'm not, a few times on the show, I've talked about my interpretation of lyrics that are a bit outside maybe what Tom meant or what everyone else brought up. But that, again, to me, and that's why I like your channel, is because it's not you being didactic and saying, this is how you should play this. This is how I play it. And this is how I like to play. This isn't the chord phrasing that Mike's using, but I like it because of this. And then that makes me think, okay, well, yeah, then you love the music. It's not, because again, I mean, you could start a YouTube and cover, I don't know, you could set up a Springsteen YouTube channel and you could dig down into forensically exactly what he's playing and showing people exactly. But there's no joy in that then for me. when I watch you explain Cabin Down Below, or like you said, Square One, or any of those videos, it's like, yeah, this guy's, there's a lot of love coming through here. And again, that to me that's the only reason to do it. Is if you love the music, that's the right reason to do it. I'm scrambling now. So
Oh no, hey, I'm not stopping you. I'm not interrupting you, but no, I appreciate that. I mean, that's so good to hear. And that is kind of my philosophy. I try to say, I say, play it to the guitarists or musicians watching, play it to your ability, play it the way you want, have fun with it. I mean, that's if somebody does perform. I mean, I do performances a little bit. I'm not a big performer, but I have done live shows and stuff. If you perform true to yourself and you perform it your way, the audience is going to really like that. But if you are stiff and try to duplicate exactly the way the artist played it or replicate everything, it's going to seem hollow. It's just not going to seem genuine. It might just fall flat. So I definitely prefer the, do it your way. I try to give some suggestions, and I always say, hey, I want to try to simplify things. They're doing something that's pretty hard. Like, I struggle on this. Here's an easy way to get really close to that.
Yeah.
It's not what they're doing, but you know what? Nobody's going to hear a difference, and it's going to help you so you can focus on singing, or you can focus on engaging with the crowd. If there's not all this is for performances, it could just be for yourself. But however, so you can enjoy it. If it's so hard to play, even if you can do that and you're concentrating so hard, that's not fun. I mean, that is studio musicians, like professional musicians, they have to be that way, and they might be able to be that way and be relaxed, but I'm not that good that I can do that. So I want to enjoy it. I want to have fun. So I'm really happy to hear it, at least to you. I hope to others that comes across, because that's the whole point. And occasionally I've been lucky not to get a lot of negative comments. When you're on YouTube, you're going to get your share. I'm sure you've probably gotten stuff. You can't, it's inevitable. I've been very lucky. And I think the Tom Petty community, and hopefully you've had this experience, what a positive fan base. I mean,
absolutely.
If I compare it to the Beatles fan base, all you need is love, not for some Beatles fans. Like, I don't get it. Like, I'm like, don't you get the message of the Beatles music, to write like negative things? Not just me. I mean, I see things on Beatle groups and stuff. I just can't believe it. I'm like, are you really a fan?
Yeah.
But you really don't see that on Tom Petty. I used to be on Facebook. I'm not on anymore, but I was in one of the big Tom Petty groups. I forget the name. I never saw a negative thing ever. It was so positive, so positive. You obviously, your podcast is positive, and all your guests are super positive, and that's good. I mean, again, there's always going to be somebody that no matter what, they'll go on the Tom Petty official site under American Girl and say, this stinks, like whatever. There's somebody's gonna
hot take.
Oh, great.
But well, apart from anything else, there's more than enough negativity all over the world in different areas of life, so we don't need it in entertainment. But I was going to say, like, if you want a toxic fan base, the Van Halen fan base is insane. Like, go on any Van Halen Facebook group, any sort of community. The only thing is constantly Sammy Hagar sucks, David Lee Roth is a god, the original Six Pack is the only stuff worth listening to. It's like, oh my lord. So you're not any Van Halen fans then?
Yeah. I have no time for that. And I really appreciate it about Tom. Yeah, he was so positive. Yeah. I'm sure he had his dark moments like everybody, but his demeanor, just the way he comported himself, was so positive, so gentle. And that I think that was the fans that are gravitated to him. They like that. That's the person. They don't want him screaming and throwing things and, all that. So obviously he was passionate and he had things he felt strongly about. But he did it, I would say, in a polite way and, not in a mean way. Let's put it that way. Not in a mean way.
For sure.
And I think, these Facebook groups and different things, they're filled with a lot of people that feel that way. And that's good. So, but again, I'm personally off Facebook now, so not because of Tom Petty. I wish if everything was like Tom Petty and his fans, I would be on it, but I just couldn't handle some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
So all I have is YouTube. That's it. And and I'll just say, I listen to all your podcasts. I don't even watch you on YouTube. I know I shouldn't say these things, but you might think, well, I'm a YouTuber, like I have a channel, but I'm an audio guy, so I listen. So I never miss a podcast, but it's always just audio. I think occasionally I've seen a video here
Yeah.
and there pop up, but I listen to all the shows and all your guests. Like I wouldn't recognize your guests if I saw them, but I'd recognize their voices.
Well, look, I mean, I'm sure you're the same. I don't care whether people watch or listen. The fact that anyone listens and the fact that anyone finds anything interesting, useful, entertaining in what you do when you're sort of putting stuff out into the world is always you're just very grateful for that, right? And humbled, genuinely humbled by it. But I was we just rewind a smidge too, because you're talking, you said a few times that you are primarily rhythm guitarist and not a lead guitarist, but I was listening to the song More and More that you had posted, I think last week. That's got a very stripped back Campbell-esque solo in it that is not the work of strictly a rhythm guitarist, my friend.
Well, thank you. An original song. I had to think, what song is that? That's not a Tom Petty song. That's a Tim Bulman song.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I try. I'll be honest, a lot of times for my solos, because I do all my recordings by myself. I don't have any musician friends that I ask to record, do it all in a home studio. So if I'm going to, I want to have solos on some of my songs. A lot of them I don't, because it's not really my thing, but I add them. Probably there were many takes of that. I don't remember the solo off the top of my head, but I can imagine that wasn't a one take solo like Mike does.
Right.
I probably couldn't replicate it. I probably got it and just was like, okay, that's it. But I can get lucky. I can hit some strings, and if it sounds good, I'm like, okay, that's it. But I really, honestly, I'm not a lead guitarist. I don't think that way. I don't think in pentatonic scales and all that stuff. That's just not how my musical brain works. I really think in terms of chords and shapes, I guess, more, and melodies. So I love again, I don't remember that solo in particular, but most of my solos, I try to be more melodic, more George Harrison, maybe more Mike Campbell stuff. I mean, Mike could really shred, and I could never do that.
But he serves the song.
It serves the song, but he also can be just as melodic as George Harrison. Like he can do both, and of course he's got the slide stuff too. So, so I appreciate that. I mean, you're too kind, but I'm a rhythm guitarist.
Well, I'm gonna post that song out because that was, because I went through and I haven't listened to all the stuff yet, all the solo stuff yet, but it's this, when you sort of spot check, or you kind of just go, okay, I'm going to go back to the beginning, then I'm going to go back to the most recent, then I'm going to go somewhere in the middle, then I'm going to bounce or anything. You've got a lot of musical influences that bleed through, and it's not just Beatles, it's not just Petty, and it's not just sort of, Americana or rock. There's stuff that's kind of post-punk in there, like that inflection point I was listening to. It's got that kind of an 80s post-punk vibe to it. And Let Me Be Me, I thought was beautiful, but that's kind of a really stripped back, folky, almost like a Wildflowersy acoustic number. But more and more, I was like, that's kind of an earworm, man. And I was looking at it because you've got a really cool. If we can talk about one of your songs for a second here.
I could go on. And you're losing all your listeners are tuning out. But
no.
You and I will just keep talking. But go ahead. Yeah, I was just saying that song is my wife's favorite song.
Well, cool. But it's got such a cool lyrical motif in it, because 22 more seas left to paint. Then we move on to 33 more beers left to me, 44 more sins yet to come, and then it goes back. So that's one of those. I always think that a good songwriter tries to do something interesting, either melodically, rhythmically. There should be something in a song that's like, oh, that's kind of cool. And if straight away I latched on, thought like, that's neat. I like the 22, 33, even just that alone. Then all the parts that are around that framework are super, super cool, because it's got this very abstract, like I'm not 100% sure what it's about. And I like that in the lyrics sometimes. That's the Dylan thing, right? God knows what Bob Dylan's writing about on, Highway 61 Revisited, any of those songs. I have no idea what he's singing about, but I love it. Yeah. And this song's got more and more, has got that same kind of, that vagueness to it that I really like. So give me some background on this song. What is it about?
I can't say. I will say this. This was an early song. I wrote a lot of songs when I was young.
Okay.
Like in my teens, 20s. And then didn't write for like 3 decades, just life, kids, all that other stuff. I always played music, but I just kind of stopped writing. And then, 5 or 10 years ago, somewhere around there, music's really picked up again in my life, and songwriting came back in. So occasionally I'll go back. I have to admit, every time I pick up my guitar, I usually come up with something when I'm not even trying. So it's just been flowing, whether it's good or not. everybody can judge that. I don't know. I think some's better than others, but I feel like I'm in definitely the most creative period of my life, and it's just happening. I read Rick Rubin's book on creativity, which that's a tie in Rick Rubin, and I that really resonated with me. But anyway, so this was an older song I had written, very different time in my life. It's the actual 22 miles from South Bend. The end verse was the first verse on the original version of this.
Oh, okay.
So it really was about, I went to school in Indiana, near South Bend, Indiana. So it had to do with relationships and things back then, and that a former life of mine, will say. So, but I always liked the song. So I went back to it just one day, and I add it's very different than the original, and all the lyrics are new except basically that line. Well, I think it's the final verse, the 22 miles from South Bend. Yeah. But that was the song to me, so I just decided to put that in, and I thought it was kind of cool to put it in at the end. It just, again, so there isn't there really isn't one, theme or what it's written about. I would just say it's different points in my life. I'm very much an imagery person. I like the kind of the John Lennon style of lyrics. Yeah. I don't like particularly literal lyrics often. Occasionally I'll do that. I know a lot of people really like that. But my natural thought is I want the lyrics to fit the music, the mood, the melody. And when we get to the House in the Woods, it's why I'm so excited to talk about the song, because it's a perfect example to me of that. So it really is just imagery and kind of what you said, just trying to come up with something. Lyrics, I know you write too. It's hard. It's hard.
Really
Tom said, it's hard. It's really hard. And I write a lot, and I keep practicing. And I don't know if you know Gary Burr. He's a songwriter in Nashville. He's written songs for Ringo, for Bruce. He's a big deal Nashville guy, mostly country. And I'm not a big country person, but he's a professional songwriter, very, very well accomplished. I've listened to many of his talks about songwriting, and he says, to write songs, it's practice. Write 100 songs. Write 100 songs in a very big, verse, chorus. Just like he says, it's like building a house. You build your first house, you just build a square house. Just 2 rooms, square house. Build 100 of those, and then you could add the deck on. So with songwriting, after you write 100 basic songs, now write another 100, but add, a key change, add, a pre-chorus, something, different things, techniques. I'm not going to call them tricks, because they're not. They're techniques to songwriting. So I'm still, I don't know, I'm maybe in my 200 or 300 song. I have no idea. Somewhere in the hundreds. So I'm still at the beginning, compared to somebody like Gary Burr. But I'm following his advice that he gives to all songwriters. Just keep writing, keep practicing. You get better. You add more. You change things. So that's kind of the journey I'm on right now. I don't know if it will stop. I have no plans. I have no big aspirations. I'm just enjoying what I'm doing. But that's my thought, is just keep, I'm having fun. I'm not killing myself doing this, but as long as the muse is there and I feel inspired and I want to write, I'm going to keep trying new things. So a lot of the songs you mentioned, they're pretty different than each other. Yeah. A lot of people do remark, you don't just write the same song over and over again. I really try not to. I do have my style, but I do try to push myself and change things up and try things I haven't tried before. So, I'm glad you've noticed that. And maybe, I have a couple of really loyal YouTube followers, I guess, that comment on all my songs, and I comment on their songs and that kind of stuff. Other musicians, songwriters. And, that's a real positive group of people. It's probably like 25, 50 people, but we all share ideas and our thoughts about each other's songs. Yeah. I've collaborated with some of them, all that kind of stuff. So, but no smoking gun on more and more. It's whatever you want it to be, Kevin. It's whatever you want it to be.
But again,
really,
that's what I love about that type of song, is because, and I'm the same. I love an imagery song. I love a song where, so my favorite Peter Gabriel song, and it's one of my favorite songs of all time, is Mercy Street. And for years and years, I don't know if you know the song, but it's actually written sort of inspired by this very specific poem by a poet I can't remember. But that song, to me, from the very first time I heard it, some of the things he's talking about, confessing all the secret things in a warm velvet box, that to me was just like this. I could see a whole movie within just in that one line, I can see a whole movie in my head about that. And so when you get a song where you've got these lines, like, and I didn't know what a jitney, I've never heard that word. What the hell is a jitney? So I'm gonna look that up, and it's like, okay, awesome, I can latch onto this. I totally get what this is. So yeah, I'm becoming a pretty big fan, man. I'm gonna have to, like I said, I'm gonna put together a few songs for people to listen to, because that's the other thing doing this podcast. I get turned on to lots of different artists, and I do like the idea that people learn. I mean, Nick Apostolaris out in New York, who's been on a couple of times, who's a fantastic guy, and his music is not stuff that I would ordinarily listen to. That's sort of very stripped back garage band, punky type stuff, but something about it that it just jives with you, right? And that's the beauty of music, I think, overall, is it doesn't matter why you like it. If you like it, listen to it.
Yeah, I try not to overanalyze. Even when we get into the song, I try to take, do you like it? Does it touch you?
Yeah.
Does it move you? If all those things happen, I really don't care. Like that's what's important. So again, I appreciate it. I'll say, I've talked about my original music. I so appreciate you bringing it up, though. Just to say something different, I just recorded like what I consider my epic. I decided I wanted to write an epic song, kind of like a wake up time. It's not a Tom Petty specific song, although it's pretty Tom Petty-ish.
Right.
But I wasn't trying to be Tom Petty, but I would say if you listen, you probably go that you could definitely tell Tom Petty's an influence on me if you listen to the song. But it was one of those, I purposely said, I've never done something. Usually my songs are 3 minutes. People stop viewing usually after 30 seconds. So like, what am I doing a long song for? Blah, blah, blah. Do I want to listen to somebody's 7-minute song? Maybe not always myself. I got to be honest. But I said, it's okay. I'm working on my songwriting, and I'm going to set out and try to write like an opus epic song. So I will tell you, it's coming down on my channel. It's called The 31st of June. So I recommend that to you just to give it a listen. Definitely has Tom Petty vibes. It's not a Tom Petty tribute song. I've mentioned Tom in some of my songs and been a little more overt. This isn't that, but it has, maybe a song like Echo. It has Echo. Okay. It has an echo of Echo, I would say. I love Echo. I covered Echo. And I think when I learned Echo, that was a song I did not appreciate for a long time. Now I think it's gorgeous. I think it's beautiful, stunning. So personal.
I think that song, I'm sorry to interrupt. Nope. I think that song deserves to be in the conversation. I mean, obviously, this ends up being subjective, but when people talk about Tom Petty's best song, I think Echo really deserves to be in that conversation because it's absolutely stunning. And it's heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. I listened to it today.
Yeah.
I listened to a lot of things in preparation, but I listened to that again. And I almost cried. I mean, it's so personal. But even setting that aside, musically, it's so beautiful. I mean, it fits so well. And when I learned to play that song, and I did that one, I think soaks into your DNA as a guitarist, as a musician. And I would say, again, I was not purposely thinking I'm going to write Echo at all, but I would think if you do listen to it, and it's okay if you don't, you might hear an echo of Echo or some Tom Petty in there, but I'd be curious on that one just because it's definitely, I've never done a big song, big production, lots of fake strings and stuff. So I think I'll put it out next week. I just recorded it. So
cool, anyway, man.
That's it. I'm going to stop about my original music.
It's so, well, I'm going to talk about my original music because it's so funny the timing is because I've got this, man, I've been working on this now for 4 or 5 weeks. I've had this mad idea. I've got this song going called I Am Spartacus, A Tragedy in 5 Parts. I've been watching Spartacus and I'm like all that kind of nerdy sort of old history type stuff. So this song's going to be like, I started writing, it was going to be one song and I got to like 4 minutes worth of lyrics and then 6. And I was like, I think this is like a 2112. I think this is going to be the whole song. It's going to be like 15 minutes long or something, man. But I suppose though, when you sort of embrace that and think, okay, well, if I'm going to give myself 5, 6, 7 minutes, I can actually explore things in a different way, and I can say a little bit more, and it is a different discipline to writing a 3-minute in and out pop song with a big hook, right? That's a totally different thing. So I'm really, really excited to do this. So yeah, next week's the 31st of June.
The 31st of June.
Yeah, I will make sure I share that when it comes out then. Perfect.
But yeah.
Okay, well, let people know where they can find the YouTube channel, what you got going on. We've already talked about there's a song coming out hopefully next week. Give people the skinny on where they can find you. Oh, you know what? I didn't ask you though, quickly before we do that.
Yeah, sure.
Where does the handle come from? Where does Judge Timbers come from? I forgot to ask you that.
I've been told. I mean, it's silly, but
Dick.
Timbers obviously comes from Tim. It was a nickname
Oh,
my
okay.
late father-in-law gave me. So it always, the first time he met me about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, he just shook my hand. Hey, Timbers, nice to meet you. And nobody's ever called me Timbers in my life. It wasn't anything. And he called me that. So I just kind of have used that when I started my YouTube channel. I had come up with the name. I didn't have a public YouTube. I mean, it was public, but I wasn't posting for the public. It was just my personal YouTube channel. I had to come up with the name. So Timbers was just something I used. Judge, I am actually a real judge in real life, in my professional life.
Okay.
I won't go too much into it, but in Philadelphia, don't put people in jail. Nothing like that. It's
Okay.
a very low level judge. So
Cool.
it was just at the time, it was just sort of my own nickname, and I performed in a duo with my cousin. He was Chico, and I was the judge. So we were Chico and the judge. So we kind of just used that. It was just a nickname. A lot of people call me Judge. That's only at work is that required.
Yeah.
But so it's really just a name I created as a handle on YouTube. And then when I did my channel, I mean, I didn't change it. And then here we are.
Yeah.
My channel started 11 years ago. So now I kind of have this out there. I kind of wish it wasn't the name, but I don't want to change it because people know it and everybody calls me Judge, just like, and I'm like, oh, not even knowing. And that's cool. Or Tim is what I like to be called, or Timbers. Cool. So yeah, so it's that's the story behind that.
Okay, and so is that at Judge Timbers on YouTube? Because we've all got ats now, right? So
no, I think it's just I would just search Judge Timbers.
Yeah,
just get my channel. Yeah, I don't even know, Kevin. Sorry. I mean, I just search Judge Timbers, and I think I'll pop up. And that's it. That's my only media presence, if you want to call it. Like I said, my channel's not monetized. I'm not, seeking out people, but I'm anybody's welcome that has a positive attitude and, is interested in Tom Petty, the Beatles, other music. I mean, I do other stuff, so I won't, go on, and obviously some original stuff too. But yeah, YouTube, that's it. No Facebook, no other social media. I'm off.
You're off the grid. Well, that's
I'm
great.
off the grid.
And if you're looking for that stuff, go look at the episode notes, folks, because I will put some stuff in there, and I will be sharing some of Tim's original compositions out online because they are well worth listening. I think anyone who's into Tom Petty or is into music generally, you'll enjoy the stuff that he's doing. So go check out Tim's YouTube channel, and we'll see you next week.